Randy, you're all set.
Good morning. This is I'm calling the Downtown Facilities Special Committee meeting to order. We have 8 legislators. The committee is all here. This may be the last meeting of the Downtown Facilities Special Committee, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Are there any changes to the agenda by anybody? Seeing none. We do have 2 people who have submitted requests to speak to the public, and the first one is Amanda Kirchner.
Kirch Gessner.
Thank you. Hello. There we go. Good morning. Yeah, just here to rah, code blue shelter. They have since cleaned it up, but I was hearing really fun reports of the men's restroom being completely overflowed. I don't know if you've been in a restroom after someone has defecated in the urinal repeatedly, but it doesn't smell great. I'm not sure how to encourage people to help maintain the cleanliness of their environment. I imagine helping them maintain cleanliness of their bodies would help through access to showers. So I'm hopeful we're here to discuss that today. And then also in my communications with the Office of Temporary Disability Assistance, at the state level, there's a big distinction between warming centers and emergency shelter. So a little bit of parsing the language there is probably important in terms of what the county's responsibility is in providing emergency shelter. I know that we're looking for someone to contract to actually assume care, like assume responsibility for that care, but that's not a facilities issue. And then I'm gonna reiterate, one centralized shelter downtown next to the jungle is a really bad idea. You don't wanna put people right next to the environment that they're coming out of, especially if there are active drug use dependency issues and active alcoholism. You wanna move them away from where they're harming themselves. You want to give them some space from that. So please work that into any facilities planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. We have another member from public, Christine O'Malley.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year, me again. So just coming on behalf of Historic Ithaca, I'm delighted to see you're moving forward on the center of government with the project team. And so I recall from discussions last year that there was mention of public consultation and input from local organizations. So I just wanted to reiterate that Historic Ithaca is here and available and happy to consult with the architects and the design team and offer input if it's wanted from this committee. But we're certainly happy to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the comments from the public. And can I get somebody to move the approval of minutes from December 10th, 2024 and December 17th, 2024? Deborah, seconded by Greg. Any comments? All in favor? Thank you. As I mentioned, been discussing the need for this committee with Dan and Greg and other legislators, and the thought is that we may need to convene to discuss things outside of the regular facilities and infrastructure committee. But we'll do that as we need to do that, and it may be a group, maybe formed, a working group. Greg, if you want to comment on that or not, or but we'll now that we've hired Holt Architects, they're going to be leading a lot of this process. There will be a time frame in there where we'll be hearing from the public and getting their feedback on various things. The first requirement is to determine how we're going to work with the buildings that we currently own in this project, and what's going to happen with them, and how we work with SHPO to get their approvals so that we can decide to remove those buildings. The construction of the new building encompasses all three of the buildings, even the where Board of Elections and the assessment offices and IT. Almost all designs include the space where that building is as well. So to leave that building and build around it, it's going to be complicated and expensive and dirty and cause all sorts of problems. So we need to look at that as a whole, I believe. Susan, would you like to say anything? Great. Where's Arel? Arel, coming up. Deborah, go ahead.
I'm a bit disappointed that this committee will not continue in some form. I think we probably wouldn't need to have a downtown facilities committee that met every month, but I think it would be helpful to have a committee either on standby to deal with issues as they arise, or else a committee that met 4 times a year, say. Because I do think that F&I has a very full plate without dealing with the issues that might arise in connection with building the new facilities. So I just wanted to weigh in on that. But I wanted to thank you, Randy, and Susan for doing a good job guiding us through this year. We've had a lot of issues to deal with, and you guys have helped us through, so thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, Deborah, that's a good point. And again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Dan, and I know a final decision has not been made yet. But I think, hearing that feedback and getting some of that input, which we've been going through and meeting with all the legislators, is very important. And I think finding, to your point, kind of a hybrid model, or a model that remains sort of with the finger on the pulse of moving this project and the many downtown projects forward is going to be critical. So that is part of the larger discussion, and trying to come up with a solution that achieves that is the goal.
Thank you.
Yes, Annie?
I just wanted to say I concur with what Deborah said, as far as, if we could find, I would like to still have this committee, the chair, and yes, and thank you, Randy and Susan, for guiding us, this past year. And I think it would be helpful to have this committee. The chair can decide how often we need to meet, and versus also with the input of staff. Sometimes Holt Architect might want to meet with us. So I think it would be really helpful, and then, we can decide whether it's 4 times a year, 6 times a year, or, we kind of save this time on our monthly schedules, and then say, okay, this time we're going to meet. And there might be times where something might be, and I'd like to hear, what other folks have to say. That's just my opinion, but there might be times where we need to have something to do with contracts or budgeting or decisions about moving departments or all kinds of things, and parking, that we might need to meet soon, that we might say, okay, let's meet next week. As long as, I think we need a week's adequate notice to the public. So I'd like to be flexible, and I'm hoping I'm on this committee next year, but if not, really thank you for all the work on this, everybody.
Thank you. Mike?
When we get into construction, you definitely need a committee of legislators to focus on that. But we're, in the new schedule we looked at, we're not into construction here for a couple of years. And this year we've had to cancel some meetings because we didn't have anything to do. And that's not a bad thing, it's just the way it happens. I think that being able to have a committee that gets focused on the actual construction is important in the future. And if we have let's just say a hybrid committee, I suppose we could look at that. But I don't think, especially since we've tied our hands with SHPO, and certainly the creation of the Code Blue Shelter. I don't really see that there's a lot going on here that can't be covered in F&I.
Okay, I do think, I agree that a month between meetings to deal with issues maybe is too long, and we'll have to decide to meet in some capacity, and we'll figure that out. So, thank you, everybody. We're going to go right into reports and updates, and Arel's here, and we're going to talk about the update on the Holt contract.
Good morning, everyone. The legislature approved moving forward with the contract with Holt last month, and so I quickly finalized the AIA agreement between the owner and architect. It has been reviewed many times back and forth. We've added some language to the contract, and it's been submitted to our county attorney for review. We have all the insurance certificates as well. So I'm waiting really at this point for the county attorney's office to approve the agreement. I've offered to meet in person to go over it. It is a long agreement. I think I shared parts of it a couple of months ago. So I'm hoping that by the end of this week, it's approved. In my meetings with Holt in December, they are moving forward. You know, I did give them a notice to proceed. Verbal, they know that we're good for it as far as the contract, so they have started initial meetings already on the task one, which is the SHPO and historic preservation piece of the contract.
Great, thank you. Anybody, any questions for Arel? Great, you're off the hook, Arel. We're going to, the next discussion, we'll jump right into the State Historic Preservation Office SHPO update. I'm not sure if we have a lot of.
Randy, I guess I did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And I think it was based on privilege of the floor this morning. When do we start talking to the public?
That's on our schedule, and that won't be until after we get through this initial task, SHPO, and then also doing an initial parking analysis and also looking at utilities. So that, I think, in the schedule is in May. And
Of this year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's not
Yes.
bad.
Megan, do you want to step up and fill us in?
Good morning. I too am very excited to have the Holt team with us. You've probably heard me say too many times that we were really waiting for next steps with the SHPO to have the whole consultant team on board. And so Katie and I did have an initial conversation with their preservation sub-consultant January 3rd. And so we've been sharing all the information, everything that's been done, you know, to date, the online kind of information in the system. That's sort of the technical piece of our consultation, so she can get familiar with that. And also sharing all the work that's been happening over the fall and winter, with thanks to Arel for building access and Historic Ithaca and others in the community. We've had the Cornell class and a National Park Service historian who lives locally doing some documentation work on the building so that she's aware of kind of everything that's been happening, both where we are to date with the SHPO, so she can dig into that. And I think we're going to have some additional conversations, but I think she's approaching getting familiar with the situation and where we're at, and also already having a relationship with the SHPO's office to see what they're thinking in terms of next steps and process, and then getting our information together, since we do know that we're going to have to show that we've explored various alternatives and options and go from there. So there's not a lot new, I suppose, to report right now, but getting that all teed up, I think, will be terrific to get the next steps going.
Great. Arel, in the timeline, we were, I think, showing that we were trying to get the approval from SHPO by the end of April on the buildings?
Yeah, I've got the schedule, but I can't get it up on my, so I asked
Just,
if Jordan can bring it
I
up,
had
or
to-
Katrina.
I had updates.
That's right. So I think, it seems to me that was the, and I didn't bring my hard copy, so I apologize. But anyways, I'd like to verify again that the goal of this committee is to get approval from SHPO to remove all 3 buildings that they have classified. Everybody in agreement on that? Okay, just wanted to make sure that that was still the plan. Any other discussion on SHPO in that process or around?
So I looked at the schedule. I can't bring it up on my computer to share it with you, so I sent it to Jordan and Katrina, but we're looking at a 12-week process with historic preservation, so that's end of March. That's our hope. And I know that we're meeting internally with HALT next Wednesday, 3-hour meeting to continue the discussion with the subconsultant regarding SHPO and our approach to them. So we're hopeful by the end of March, but at this point, that's what's scheduled. We'll report on that at our next meeting, how that is progressing.
Aurel, internally, as far as county staff, who is going to be working directly with Holt, do you think?
Myself, some of the planning sustainability team members, so Katie and Megan will be involved in these initial meetings as we meet with the subconsultant regarding SHPO and historic preservation. But for the most part, I'll be the point of contact and then bring in other staff as needed throughout the process.
Thank you. Any questions on that subject? Okay, we're moving right along here. One of the issues, as people know, we've converted the old Key Bank building into the temporary Code Blue shelter. And for us to move forward on our plan, we need to determine if we're going to use that shelter again where it is, or if we're going to move forward quickly and construct or remodel a facility to be the temporary Code Blue shelter for the next season. The plan for that is down on Cherry Street, where there is a building behind the building that Found is in currently. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that that was the plan and that we need to move pretty quickly if we're going to do that. And I wanted to open it up to discussion if anybody has any thoughts on that. Mike.
Yeah, we can't go beyond this winter for using the Key Bank building. We've already heard problems there now. The neighbors aren't happy. We've been able to tell them it's only temporary. And if we don't find a different location that has all the amenities, not just a trailer, I think it's going to be a long-term problem for this whole county.
Any more thoughts on that one? Deborah? Then Greg?
Well, I agree with Mike. I mean, using the Key Bank building this year was a rapid response to an emergent problem. But I don't think anybody ever thought that that was going to be a permanent solution. I'm a little puzzled, though, as to whether making a decision on that is within the remit of this committee. I think the entire legislature and HED really is going to have to take point on that particular issue.
Greg?
I guess first I would say, with all respect to the neighbors, that's less of my concern, and more of my concern is how we best serve that population. I don't think we're set up in the Key Bank building to continue to serve that population well. So if a Found upfit is an option, or there's other options available that may not be known to us at this time, I think we need to move forward and say, okay, we need to take the next steps to figure out where the next location may be. I think your suggestion is one, but I do think that there may be potentially other options that we really should seriously explore before committing to a retrofit of the building down there. And this is a complex conversation as it relates to service providers and what space other nonprofit organizations may bring to the conversation, through an RFP, if we have to have that space. So I want to be cautious before we fully commit to something, but I think we can commit to something other than the downtown bank building, is I think the statement that we should be making. Because I think, to Mike's point, we need to make sure that we have better amenities, better space to serve. I think we've done as good as we could do in the time that we had, but we do need to do better.
My reason for bringing this up was because of the timeline involved in finding another facility, whether it's the one down there on Cherry Street or someplace else. How much time do you need, Arel, if we decided to go with that building down there, to renovate it so it does have better conditions and amenities? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I did want to say initially that Bridget isn't here, but I know that county administration is working to put out an RFP to seek a shelter provider, and the hope, and also working with MMDA advisors in crafting that RFP to see if we can find an agency, as was referred to here, that would then provide the Code Blue emergency shelter. So they may have a facility, but in the case that that doesn't happen, I would say 2 to 3 months. Three would be optimal. Now, that space is going to be probably comparable to what we have now as far as Code Blue. If any of you have been there, it's basically a Morton-type building, single story, about 3,200 square feet. The flooring is just concrete on slabs, so it's not as nice as the terrazzo that we have here. And we would have to put a fire alarm system. We would have to do similar to a restroom trailer setup, so very similar to what we've done here. And so this took us 2 months to do. I would like it as a minimum 3 months. So I think we still have time, hopefully, once this RFP goes out, and if we do get a shelter provider that does have facilities, that would obviously make it much easier and better than having to renovate an existing building on Cherry Street.
So realistically, you know by July.
Yes.
So that gives us 5 months to figure something else out. And will that go all through HED?
That's a great question. I mean, if there's a facilities component, if there's a budget component, I mean, I see that this is an entire
Group effort.
It's a group effort. It would likely start the conversation in HED, and then, like many committees, go to either BCP, go to facilities, then go to the full legislature. So not knowing what exactly the solution is, it's hard to understand the direct path, but it will involve multiple committees, I'm sure.
Deborah, did you have a comment? Or?
Well, I was just wondering, we have that building up on Trip Hammer where Alcohol and Drug Council had been, and I know that they did substantial renovations in that building. And as far as I know, for the time being, nobody's using it.
That's correct.
Has anybody, well, I mean, eventually, Cayuga Med is supposed to be moving in there and taking over that program. But unless and until they do, and it's final, has anybody explored the possibility of us using that as a shelter? Because it's just sitting there.
Code Blue?
Code Blue or otherwise. I don't know how quickly, Cayuga Med will be moving now, but I know it's been sitting empty for the better part of a year.
I think that when they were here, they said their goal was to open up by 2026, is what they,
It's a ways away, isn't it?
right. Yeah. Yes, Norma?
Sure, and just to remind the committee that the Community Recovery Fund has allocated a little over $1 million for renovations of, and I believe will be that building. So I expect that probably they would begin doing some of that work as well. So we've got some work to do to find out from them when they plan to begin renovating.
I thought they were going to be renovating that space in the mall that they used for vaccinations and testing, because that's a big space as well. There's lots of empty space. I just think that there are things that could be explored. The mall seems to have extra space every day.
Greg?
Yeah, I think by no means we're rich with shelter capacity in our current system, but, you know, we do have some available space that likely will be coming online to serve the unhoused in THA type housing with a hotel partner that's still sort of moving forward. So I would caution to quickly rush into something before we have a full understanding of of what our needs are and what space we have and what space is coming to the table here very, very quickly. So it's a good idea, and I think we should keep those options as we look for additional Code Blue space, you know, in the back of our minds.
Yeah, Maury?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in that the mall was pretty much a non-starter when we had the current emergency, so I don't think that's an option that we should think is viable. They were a hard no in terms of using their space.
Thank you. Yeah, my goal in bringing this up was just to set that we need to know a timeline if we're going to be using that facility down on Cherry Street. So now we have that. And Norma?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to also, so we are still working on getting to close that property, so that has not yet closed. We're working through the lease information, or the lease with the current tenant and so on. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that. I hope it's going to be closed by the end of the month.
Thank you. Any more discussion on that? Great. The next one I added in here was temporary department relocation discussion. And I want to bring this up for numerous reasons. One, we have departments that are currently housed in buildings in this complex that don't have enough space now, and they're maxed in their space. And also discussion on is it Annex C? Is that what's called, Mike, over here? Is that Annex C? And the discussion that was going on for a year or more, that IT could only move once. And so that discussion has changed a little bit, and it's okay, and I think IT could move more than once. And the reason I would bring that up is because if we're going to take that building down or try to leave it up with IT and the other departments staying in there, would be a nightmare and would just be a problem. I can't imagine the dust involved, and I just don't think that's a good idea to try to keep that building alive while we're doing this whole construction project. I think it needs to come down as well for the new construction. Mike?
Do we need to revisit the thought of possibly using the basement of the old jail? Getting rid of those boilers?
May I ask, when you said that the thinking has changed and you think that IT can move more than once, is that you or is that Arel and Lauren?
Yes.
All of the above. So at the last committee meeting, I think, when we went over the schedule and we were looking at the various additional services that were being presented in the discussion that I'd had on scope of services, they had a whole list of additional scopes that could be provided, and one of them had to do with ITS relocation. And it's really more than just ITS, but they're really a key component because of the infrastructure, but also it'd be Board of Elections and assessment. That it would be hard and possibly unlikely for us to preserve the building during construction unless it's a smaller building, a smaller footprint. And those of you that attended the interview with the various consultants, you saw several renderings that the Holt team presented. All of those footprints actually encroached onto the property of Building C. So if we were to, I'm not saying that we're looking at developing any of those, but those were a sampling of possible footprints of buildings. We would not be able to preserve Building C. So I'm not saying at this point that anything that we do develop as we progress in design and schematic design, that it won't encroach onto Building C. But I think even if we didn't, the noise, vibration, and proximity to Building C, especially the infrastructure that exists there, there's really a delicate fiber connection from Building C running over to main courthouse, which is pretty shallow below the pavement. And so even work around that area may compromise that. So I did accept that additional service, and I've spoken to Lauren several times since in the last couple of months about that. So they are open to exploring the possibility of what we would call swing space. And so it was his predecessor, Greg Potter, that initially had said, no, just one move. I think some things have changed as far as ITS and their operations and infrastructure that we would review as part of this relocation plan that would really poise us for moving into a new building and be prepared to not have to be too disruptive to their operations. So they're open to that swing space. So we will be meeting with them probably within the next month to start those discussions and some of the conditions that would be critical to them to preserve, and also to looking at making improvements to their infrastructure now rather than once we start construction on the center of government. Because as I said right now, some of their infrastructure runs from Building C through main courthouse and then over to the old jail and then ultimately to this building under tunnels. And the main courthouse, once we move forward to center of government and occupying that building, they will only be state operations in that building. So it does make sense to have infrastructure running through that building and through tunnels that really we can't access because of asbestos and such. So it really makes sense to abandon that underground infrastructure and really go overhead like they do now. I mean, the fiber comes into Building C overhead, and then it goes underground to all the other buildings. So that's part of what we'll be discussing as part of this ITS relocation.
Good to know, thank you.
To your comment, Mike, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring up relocation of departments is because we do have 7,000 square feet in the mental health building that's completely empty, and they're all offices and should be utilized. And it may make sense to move some current departments either in the old jail, maybe the plan department, I'm not picking anybody, but I'm not sure, well, the discussion, to so that we can start doing some of those minor renovations in these other buildings as we prepare to move other people into them, right? So, because that's the goal, is to move people into those buildings. Everybody seems to be moving somewhere. I'm not sure anybody's staying where we are except for maybe us. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. I'm not sure which departments may make sense to go into the mental health building. I know parking is an issue there as well, but there are parking ramps and we can figure that out. But I want to open up to get people's thoughts on it.
So you wouldn't move IT to the mental health building because of the connections. So it'd be like Tetris, kind of. You'd move somebody out of this campus so you could move IT. Yeah, okay. Well,
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that was my thought.
I just wondered what you had to bribe Lauren with.
I didn't.
And the other question is there some place where the IT department could go permanently if we make these moves? So do we have to move more than, do they have to be in the center government building? Maybe it makes sense to be, because that's going to be easier to run all those
Yeah.
wires and stuff. But I wanted to open that up. Mike?
Well, as I said, at one time, we were talking about IT going into the old jail. At some point, we've got to get that space cleared out and spend the money to have those boilers cut up or whatever it's going to take.
Now, that's going to cost a fortune.
Well, yeah, but are you
No,
just going
I
to leave them there
understand, but
forever?
yeah, I know.
That's the problem. And we should use space we've got, but we shouldn't be afraid to lease some temporary space. And there is first-class office space not too far away from here, even some of it across the street, that could be used for relocation purposes for a period of time. We've had this thing that we want to do away with all the leases. Well, leases have a reasonable use for particular purposes. Just take a look at DMV. People really like DMV where it is, and we lease that. So we have to look at each thing, but if we need to lease for a year or two some first-class office space close to the campus down here, I think we should do that.
I agree with that. Annie?
So I'm not sure what Lauren said, thinks about this, but I know, speaking with folks from IT before, that them and different departments it seemed integral to have them, IT, in the center of government, because they work with all departments very frequently. So I'm not sure. So I think moving them temporarily, I don't want to, I'm just saying an example for planning since they're here, but someone mentioned them. I know they would like to be in the center of government. I don't know if they'd want to move all the way over to the mental health building temporarily, but, I don't, and I don't know if there's enough room for IT downstairs. But I think, we should look at that, and it might take more than just us thinking about it. It might take, staff some time to figure out and maybe bring back some suggestions to us to play the Tetris game.
My thought is kind of a shell game. Anybody that we move in the mental health building that's currently in this campus, it would be a temporary thing. I can't imagine it would be a permanent thing. Maybe the finance department doesn't want to be next to anybody else. I don't know. But it would make sense to put them in the center of the building as well. But then it becomes an issue of, can we plan ahead, and if we can move people out of the old jail, can we do some renovations so that when we're ready to move people out of the courthouse or whoever else is going in that building, it'll be ready for them so they don't have to move more than once. So that was my thought. I was trying to figure that out. So, Greg.
With Building C, though, we have IT assessment and the Board of Elections, so.
Right.
They're all going to have to move.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just an IT move, it's, first I want to commend the poker face of our planning department in this process, well done. Second, I think we should ask the administration and facilities to come back with the recommendation to, maybe an early vacate of Building C as it relates to our timeline, and maybe weigh two options, or, I don't think we need to overanalyze this, or, but let them make a decision with the idea that we're potentially open to leases, or we're open to some light, refreshes of space that will contribute to the overall goal, whatever it may be.
How does anybody else feel about leasing space temporarily as needed?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You can find it.
Of course, so there you go.
Yes, I'm new to this game too, so understand. I'm learning the process, what's going on, what has been done so far, and I think, and I appreciate the discussion. It's like you're giving us the tools to be able to think through the processes and take on board your comfort level on certain things and certain movement. I think fundamentally it's about the departments also being.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's also about the department being able to relocate and at how many times they can. I know from the briefing I've got so far, IT has some critical data location that we have to be extremely cautious in the move of IT, and how we manage that process is very important for our all IT architecture as well. So we will look at all the options and bring to you what we believe will work, and then get the support to be able to move those processes forward. So we appreciate the feedback from you and also the direction, and I think we will not be scared to ask you for money to lease. It feels that you're comfortable if we come with that proposal. So definitely we will evaluate all options and come to you with option that will make sense, and at least will provide all the departments that are going to be affected certain degree of comfort in terms of what actions we take going forward. So we appreciate that candidness from you and pointing to us what we ought to be exploring if we are not thinking about it as administration.
Thank you, Corsa. One of my issues, I really don't like seeing a whole floor on a mental health building, a very nice office being empty, when we have offices that are, people are stacked on top of each other. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Okay.
Any other comments on that? Okay. This isn't on the agenda, but I'm gonna add it anyways. I took a tour of the public library on December 19th. A really awesome facility, very clean on the inside, and it's 72,000 square feet. That's a massive building, and there's not many people in it. Just a matter of fact, it's just the way it is. So I was told that it was much busier on weekends, so I went there, and it was much busier on the weekend. And it was Saturday around 11, and there were 32 people in there, which was more than I saw during the week. So in that building used to be the Finger Lakes Library System, which they left 7, 8 years ago, 9, I forget how long ago they left. And so the library just absorbed that space. And it's an awesome space, and it's underutilized. I don't know, libraries have changed. I took the liberty of, I had a separate meeting with Chris Spoon on something else, and I asked him, where do you want to be? He goes, well, I don't want to be in the Center Government Building. I go, oh, okay, well, where do you want to be? I said, what about the library? He goes, I'd love to be in the library. So and my point is, maybe that's not the solution, but there's a separate entrance to the library where the Finger Lakes Library System used to be in the backside. So that facility could be reused, whether it's by Office of Aging or whoever we decide to put in there. There are front-facing departments that truly have space and resources, and it's not just stacking them along with everybody else in this building where it's going to be difficult to get to, and parking is going to be an issue. And I know people love the library, and I like the library too, but it's an underutilized space, and it's very expensive. It's costing us a ton of money.
Are you talking about the second floor?
No.
I'm talking the first floor.
I'm sorry, I just got to interrupt.
Yeah.
Since I was the person responsible for helping Finger Lakes move out and the complete renovation, we worked closely on that. There is a mezzanine that is the second floor that's only on the back part of the building.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the administration is. That's where the Woolworths, management had been. The reason that the Finger Lakes Library System moved out is because at that time, there was a great need to expand the library. And I think that there's great danger in looking at the current situation of the library and determining that that space is no longer used. It was a heavily used building for programming, in all areas and for the expansion of the collection. So I caution against that, since there was a huge amount of work to plan for Finger Lakes Library System to move to their own building. And I understand why you're looking at that space now. The library is sort of a shadow of its former self, but I think if you have the right combination of programs and staff, it will be as busy. I mean, it was packed, and it was, every bit of space was needed. So, I mean, yeah. My alarm bells are going off. I don't know if Pharrell wants to say anything.
Thank you for hearing me out on that.
I love that you're looking at it and that you're noticing and that you went over and you paid attention, because there does need to be some changes there.
Mike?
Susan, your recollection is the same as mine. It wasn't that Finger Lakes wanted to pull out, it's that it was sort of mutual, that we thought we needed the space over there for the library. And that's when they started looking for a new location, and they've got a nice location in Dryden, of course. And but going back even further, when that building was retrofitted for the library, there was a big discussion at the special committee that was overseeing the construction of the library as to whether to put in a commercial kitchen so that you could have like a Starbucks or something in that location. The legislature talked about it, and the committee talked about it, and decided that they didn't want to spend that extra money to do that. And but I have to agree with Susan. You know, I don't think we want to give up that space right now, because things happen in the library and things that we never dreamed of before. And there's take the I can't think of the name of the area where they do the crafts and the creations.
Makerspace?
Yes, the makerspace. Take that. We never thought about that before, but the needs for the public in a community library keep evolving.
Part of what's happening is that it had a heavy programming schedule, which seems to have gone by the wayside now, but I don't think that will last, because that is one of the things that libraries have a big role in the community for programming. So for example, we have an enormous homeschooling population in the county, and the library at one point was the central location for that population. So if you take some of those spaces, then you're going to really restrict some of the needs of the community.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good, there was quite a few kids in there. They had programs going on for kids there. And there were 3 people in that room you were talking about, Mike, doing projects. There's a 3D printer in there somebody was mucking with, and there was other things going on there. My issue is that, all those things are really important, but utilization of the space just isn't there. They have a teen area, which is almost as big as this, well, probably 2/3 as big as this. Yeah. And there was one person in there both times. So I know it's an after school thing and it's busier certain times and all that kind of stuff. But it just seems to me it should be more of a center for people, a reason for people to go there. And for me, Office of the Aging, other people that are very center focused, where people want to come, seems to me like it'd be more bustling and a more active use facility. But I'll drop it and we'll bring it up again.
I just want to say that if there is the programming, there's a huge programming room that's really not being utilized now, the Borg-Warner room, and that room plus all of the group study rooms were heavily used for programs partnering with, the workforce development, like I said, homeschooling, but almost every agency in the county had programming there. So the programming seems to have gone by the wayside. So all of those spaces, if utilized properly, would be heavily used. The one thing I think it's really important to note is that that building is not able to sustain building up. Because we looked at when we were renovating, could you build more stories on? It's not built for that. There was a meeting that I attended probably in 2016 to look at air rights of building up over the library up, but that sort of went by the wayside because it is unusual to have a one-story building like that downtown. So eventually, I'm sure that will have to be looked at. But in its current, I think the current use of the library, it's dangerous to determine the use of space based on the current situation, since it doesn't reflect how the library has been utilized and how it was designed to be utilized.
Greg?
Yeah, I hear Susan and Mike loud and clear. Again, by no means, I mean, Mike spent so much time on the board. Susan, you're a professional librarian. I do think, though, that these types of conversations are critical because how will the library be used going forward? I think is part of that conversation where we need to be asking these questions. And Randy, I appreciate that you do ask those questions. And I like this idea, and hopefully in the center of government we can achieve that. But a centralized hub of services, a place where somebody can go and they can seek a job, or they could get support for this, or they could see the Office of Human Rights or Veterans Affairs, or whatever the case may be. So I guess I would say, well, it sounds like a very, very, very cautious go forward. I think that being able to have some of these conversations and dialogues, we shouldn't just put it to rest. Because maybe it makes sense for a small office or a small department or something. I don't know, but I think we need to understand what is the future of the library and their needs and their space, and what other needs are. I think we should at this point keep a lot of the conversation still on the table.
Norma?
This is not library related, so I just wanted to report to the committee that we were given notice that it appears that workforce development space for the employment side will likely be, the lease is likely to go up. They're still in negotiations, so I don't have a ton of detail, but I wanted to inform you that, and it's a significant increase is what we're seeing at this point. Just wanted to let
Is that
everyone
in
know.
the IAED space or the Center Ithaca space?
Center Ithaca space,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I visited the location in the Center of Ithaca. It's not an ideal space at all. It's not very attractive, and that's unfortunate. Mike?
To that point, Norma, was it 2 years ago that we had to start paying a bigger share because of the state said we had to?
Yep.
And are we still required to co-locate with them? Because I believe that was a problem.
Yes.
I believe that's true.
So there isn't much we can do.
We're stuck. Yeah.
Unless they all come into the center of government.
Yeah, but the state apparently makes that decision about where they want to be. And then we're just a tag along, as I understand it.
But as we talk, if it's okay, as we talk about leasing options, and we were talking about expanding our leasing, these were all items that were not part of our budget discussions or planned for. So we just have to keep all of these things in mind as we're working forward toward 2026 and how we're going to manage the budget moving forward.
Thank you, Norma. Greg?
2 comments. The first is, can any of the leasing as it relates to the chess of moving pieces around for the center of government be included in the cost of the center of government project from a finance standpoint, or do those have to be, is there some capital line that can be used for temporary relocation, or does that have to be booked as, I guess, current dollars? So that would be one question. And then the second question is, if we are going to see a significant increase in where workforce development currently is, should we not be exploring other alternative spaces where we may be able to right size? Because that space seems kind of dark and cavernous and tucked away and disjointed and not ideal. And it seems like there may be better space somewhere else where we could go to the state and say, hey, we can kind of right-size this space, we can meet the needs, because the state side seemed relatively empty too, and a pretty large space that they occupy. I guess I wouldn't be in favor of seeing the type of rent increases without exploring the cost of a move.
I mean, I can respond to part of it. I mean, most capital projects, if we have to provide swing space, which it can be either leasing space or putting departments into existing, space in another building, is covered by the capital project. I don't know if it's charged to this, but we budget it in the capital project. As some of you may recall, when we've been talking about public safety building, we're going to have to board out. So those costs are covered by the capital project. And it's a substantial amount. I think that was $2 million to board out for almost 2 years. But typically in the past, anytime we've done a project and had to relocate a department, we covered that as part of the capital project. Currently, we don't have that in there, but we would include it should that be required.
Yes, Lori?
Yeah, I concur with Arel that we can certainly put it in the capital project, but it could not be included in the bonding. So any bonding we do, we can't include those costs.
Got it. So it would have to come from our portion of the capital.
Good question. In closing, I'd like to say that the staff at the library was great, and they were very open to ideas, and they have ideas and solutions and ways to more utilize the space. And the building was really in really good condition inside. I was quite impressed with that. And the outside offices that they built were quite utilized. I think there was 5 people in those separate rooms, some with meetings, some individually. But I wanted to mention that the outside fascia needs work, and that's on the list. It definitely needs work. Yes. There's also some benches out there that probably should just be replaced. But so that is on the schedule for this year. It definitely needs some upgrading. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, we had planned to do that last fall, and then the Code Blue project came up and dropped on my lap. So we have a contractor to move forward to that, and I actually met with the library board several months ago, indicating that was a priority to give the exterior of the building a facelift. But just to let folks know, I was involved in the design and construction of the library over 25 years ago. And I can't believe it's been that long. And moving from the old library to the new library. And so, I mean, it's been 25 years. So typically after that much time, it is time. I'm not saying this year because I've got plenty on my plate now to do space analysis like we've done with all the other departments and really talk to the library and their programs, because the collections part, it looks like there are not as many collections or books as there used to be. And so I think, but as far as programs and such, that I can't speak to, but I can speak to the collections. Because when we put in the new carpets years ago, I don't know if it's been 8 years ago, they had full stacks, and we brought in a company from Chicago that used a patented system. They sandwiched the full racks. We didn't have to empty the bookcases or bookshelves. They raised them and then just rolled them over full. And that was the only way that we were able to do that project so quickly.
I have videos.
Yes, we do too. It was amazing. But those stacks are full, to the top. Now I don't think they go to the top shelves and such. So, I think it's worth looking at. I'm not going to suggest it this year, but doing a space analysis and really looking at the space. And there may be opportunities. I really can't speak to that. That's really part of programming and what the future is as far as programs for the library. But we did that as part of our space study for center government. Talk to the departments what they envision, 5-10 years out as far as space needs. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I'd rather that we hold off on that for a little while.
I would just say that the state of the collection is not right now. I just caution against looking at what is right now and trying to use that for planning, since it's not the norm. The collection has been
Purged.
decimated, and will eventually grow to be what it should be. But, as we've been sitting here, I was thinking, when I was the director of the library, I did talk to the commissioner of DSS about possibly reserving the study rooms and working with Tompkins Learning Partners to host hours there so that we could, because people, the one great thing about the library is that it is a neutral space and there's no stigma, so people like to come to the library. So, I think that there could be a really interesting project to work with Workforce. I mean, I wanted to work with them at that point. There, maybe not permanent space, but there should be a way to partner with all of these agencies, which we used to do, to make sure that the library was available to them to provide services to the community. So it's a good thought. And there probably does need to be another space analysis, but I just caution against using the use of the space right now to think about it, because that will change. It should go back to being a normal library at some point.
Annie?
Yeah, I just want to concur with what Susan said. I really see this as a temporary thing that's going on with the library. I don't know what the specifics or how specific we want to get into here, but I really believe this is a temporary thing that's going on. And the programs, the books, the makerspace, all the other things, and hopefully we'll be back and as vibrant as they were in the next couple of years. And I know people are having some conversations and trying to figure out how to help make that happen. So I really prefer, I think it might be, I'll say, detrimental to be talking about going in and trying to access or utilize that space or reorganize that for them, or because yeah, this is temporary, and to me it's sad. I'll say that the way the state of the library is now, and we need to figure out how to get it back to its vibrancy. And it just very recently, the last couple of years, it was really vibrant, and people really need that space more than ever. So so let's just, if we could, hold off on talking about trying to get in there and utilize that space for other purposes. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Meeting's adjourned.